This episode of On the Beat is brought to you by Ingles. Shop online with Ingles Curbside Pickup. New curbside stores opening every week. Please welcome Mike Griffith.
Well, hey everybody, Mike Griffith here, and welcome to tonight's show, Ingles on the Beat. Looking forward to bringing you all sorts of news and highlights from day one of the SEC Media Days. Joining me in the second segment, Cole Cubelic. You know him from ESPN and the SEC Network. He has an incredibly thorough breakdown on the league, can tell you who the biggest dangers are for Georgia. And then it's the hot and cold segment, and you will hear Nick Saban's name quite a bit, because Nick Saban's presence is felt at SEC Media Days, even though he's in the broadcast booth and not in front of the audience. Now, they say everything is bigger in Texas, and that's true, including the expectations for the Georgia Bulldogs. Every time I turn around, and people, obviously, they know, everyone knows DawgNation. They know I've covered this program 7 years now. They say, are they really going to be that good? Are they really? I'm going to tell you how good they're going to be. I've got a story. Many of you probably already read this on DawgNation.com, where I've projected the order of finish in the league. A few surprises, right? Not too many. And then I projected the Georgia players that I believe should be All-SEC. Now, preseason All-SEC teams don't really mean anything, but they're kind of a good indication of who's respected and who did what last year. I go back to 2021 and the no-name defense. I think there was only like one Georgia player that was a preseason first teamer, maybe might have been J.R. Reed, seems like. Nobody else was first. That's part of where they got the no-name defense tag. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything where people start. It's always about where they finish. But I think this particular Georgia team is loaded. And if you'd have told me that I thought Georgia could run the table this season right out of the gate, I would have said no, until I saw the spring game. And I saw enough in that spring game to make me believe that these Georgia Bulldogs can indeed go undefeated in the regular season. My first team picks, and I haven't voted yet, you'll see these teams at the end of the week. All the media here will have a vote. They'll put out they'll put out their predicted order of finish, cumulative vote of the media here. They'll put out the All-SEC teams. I focus on the Georgia guys. I can tell you who's a first-team quarterback. His name's Carson Beck. Carson Beck is preseason favorite for the Heisman Trophy. He's the leading returning quarterback in the nation in passing yardage. He's a projected number one overall draft pick. Oh, and by the way, he plays for the preseason number one team. I can't remember, and I challenge, maybe somebody in the audience knows this, has there ever been a quarterback that was preseason Heisman Trophy favorite on the preseason number one ranked team that was the leading returning passer from a year ago and that was the projected number one pick? I can't come up with one off the top of my head. Maybe it happened sometime when they wore leather helmets or something. I don't even know if they did projections back then. Carson Beck, my first-team quarterback. Trevor Etienne, cannot say enough about Etienne. You know that. I sing the praises every week. Dynamic home run hitter. Can't say enough about how much it means to have a player that can score from anywhere on the field. You're not going to catch him from behind. He's going to get the corner. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and he can go between the tackles. There's not much that Etienne can't do. He is a first-team pick. Oscar Delp, look, nobody is going to fill Brock Bowers' shoes. We understand that. Superman's gone. But Delp has quietly become one of the most versatile tight ends in the league. I look at Oscar Delp, and I think Charlie Werner. This is an NFL tight end. There's no doubt about it. I like his attitude. I like his approach. I like his leadership. And I think he's going to be productive enough to warrant that first-team status, even though he may not have the stats of some of the other players that play his position because of the way Georgia spreads the ball around. But I don't know if there's a better all-around tight end in the league than Oscar Delp. Tate Ratledge, you know Tate really well. He likes his mullet. He does a little Classic City Collective show. He's a pretty funny guy. He's got a great sense of humor, but he's an absolute masher on the offensive line. He's a road grader. Tate Ratledge is a second-day pick. I'm a little surprised that he's not here as a media representative because he is such a good interview, but I like Tate enough to say, you know what, that is a first-team offensive guard. Flipping it over to the defense, Mykel Williams was an absolute dominator in the spring game. That wasn't supposed to happen, okay? You go back and look at that athletic play Mykel made when he put his hand up, deflected the pass, and also caught it. This is a guy that can play three different positions on defense: defensive end, defensive tackle, and he can play the edge. I believe last year he actually played more snaps at tackle at 265. You might say when and how, third down packages, NASCAR package. Really high on Mykel Williams. He will be here tomorrow along with Carson Beck. And this next guy, first-team pick, how could he not be? All-American Malachi Starks. Malachi underwent shoulder surgery in the spring. All indications are he's on track to be ready to go. I think Malachi is a great spokesperson for the university, and on the field, a dynamic athlete. Just does things that defy logic. You're not supposed to make those plays. And then the punter, Brett Thorson. I really like Thorson. He doesn't get a lot of opportunities. He'll tell you that. Sometimes doesn't even get enough opportunities to qualify for the NCAA statistics, so people may overlook him for awards because you got to have a minimum number of punts. Georgia just doesn't punt. But I believe he is the best punter in the league, and I think he should be a first-team pick. Second-team pick, Roderick Robinson. And it might surprise me to go to first. 240 pounds. Think Thunder and Lightning with Robinson and Etienne. Really like the way Roderick moved the pile in GD. I know the stats didn't look like much, but go back and watch the tape. He was getting hit behind the line. He was carrying bodies. When he's got that Georgia offensive line in front of him, he's not going to get hit at the line. They're going to have to hit him at the second level. And it's going to be a linebacker that's his size or smaller, or even a safety or a corner that's even smaller than that. Don't be surprised if Rod Robinson approaches 1,000 yards and 15 touchdowns this year. Dom Lovett, Dylan Bell, I have both these receivers second team. Again, production numbers will stop them from being first team. Georgia has enough talent to spread the ball around. We'll talk about that more later in the show, that individuals do not get high target shares because other teams start double teaming them. And when they do that, Carson Beck is trained to look for the next guy that's got a favorable matchup. That's what's so great about this Georgia Chameleon offense. They go to the line of scrimmage, there's nothing they can't do. They'll shift, they'll move guys around. Carson will audible routes, audible personnel if he needs to. Another first-team pick, protecting Carson's blind side, Ernest Green III, already a guy that looks like a potential first-round pick. Now, last year he was a little rusty, but he has gotten better and better and better and stronger and bigger. Big things expected from him. Linebacker C.J. Allen, love this guy. Kirby's been hard on him. When Kirby is hard on a player like he is C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson, those linebackers, that's good news. Remember the way he used to go after Richard LeCount, right? What did Richie say? He used to call me Rat Trap Richie. Got on LeCount. One of the most productive guys, one of Kirby's favorite players. The fact that Kirby's all over these linebackers is a cue. These guys have a potential to be very special. The kicker, Peyton Woodring, I thought he was very accurate last year. I think he's very good. Again, he's going to kick a lot of extra points, not as many field goals. Make him the second team pick. Third team, Jared Wilson, very athletic center, steps in for Van Pran. You got to like what Jared brings in terms of athleticism. You wonder a little bit about the experience, but not enough for me to keep him off of the third team. Yurchek, the tight end from Stanford, might he do better? A lot of people are talking about his speed, ability to run jet sweeps and do some Brock Bowers-like things. I think Lawson Lucky can do that too. I'm not sure how much Yurchek will be used, but right now he's one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends on the NFL draft boards. Smile Munden, a little off-field issue recently. Smile, very talented linebacker, another second-day pick. I've got him there. Jalen Walker, what a hybrid player. Talk about a guy that can move all over and make plays. His sack numbers may be high enough this year to get him second or first team. I'm just not sure, so I'm just safely putting him there. Dalen Everett, I really like this guy at corner. I like the way he competes. He's got the catch-up speed. Thought he had a really good G-Day game. And then Warren Brinson. Warren is a guy that's come on and gotten better and better and better. I want to make sure I mention that. I think I had Nazir Stackhouse second team. Brinson, Stackhouse, second, third team. Bottom line, depth, power. The defensive line is going to take a notable step upward. They were 18th in the nation in run defense last year. I'd be shocked if they were any lower than 4th in the country this year. Opening segment, Ingles on the Beat. Really appreciate you joining me on this Monday night. When we come back, Cole Cubelic from the SEC Network and ESPN is going to join me. He's going to break down the league like nobody else. Some surprising thoughts from Cole on the Georgia Bulldogs. Remember, Auburn was their rival. Cole had some very interesting things to say about Carson Beck. Might surprise a lot of people. And then the final segment, hot and cold. If you're wondering what Nick Saban had to say from here, I'll tell you. It'll probably raise a few eyebrows. It might even make you laugh. Stay with us. Segment 2 coming up.
At Ingles, we're proud to work with hundreds of local farms and businesses in the communities we call home. Not only does it ensure that you get top-quality, fresh items for your family table, it's a way for us to support the amazing individuals who pour their heart and soul into delivering the very best they can do. Quality, freshness, community, it's all in the bag. Ingles, low prices, love the savings.
Well, welcome back to the show, and as promised, Cole Cubelic joins us. Cole with the SEC Network and ESPN, a former Auburn offensive lineman who also does a podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, the Cube Show podcast. Cole, thanks for joining me.
May or may not do that show.
May or may not do that.
May or may not have heard of it.
All right. We got our inside joke out of the way. Now, let's talk Georgia. Everybody's going to be talking Georgia tomorrow, but tonight I want to get your thoughts on Georgia. They're almost a unanimous preseason number one from what I've seen. When you look closely at Georgia, Cole, are they worthy of all this hype that we're getting?
Absolutely. I think the only team, honestly, Mike, that's in that conversation is Ohio State. If you're talking about preseason number one, for me, I even put Georgia a little bit ahead of Ohio State because of Carson Beck and Mike Bobo. We know how important quarterback is, and I love Chip Kelly. I love Will Howard, but I just think that when you talk about the fact that the same offensive coordinator is back with the same quarterback and a large number of the players around him, that pushes them ahead of Ohio State for me. Even if Ohio State has upped the ante on the talent and gotten close and maybe closed the gap on Georgia from an overall talent perspective, I'll take the quarterback that loves to challenge the middle of the field, that has the guts to do that. Not a lot of college quarterbacks do. That has an OC back with him that now, outside of tight end, has even more pieces to kind of move around, put in different places, do some different things with. I think Georgia's a clear-cut number one team in the nation going into this season.
Yeah, I think things look really good. And to Cole's point, the last time Georgia had an offensive coordinator and a quarterback coming back, they went 15-0. And this was after losing 15 NFL draft picks, 13 players to the portal, 4 of which were former starters. So the results are in. We've seen it before. I want to ask you about Trevor Etienne. This is a guy that I'm just so high on. X factor, right? Everybody says, how do you replace Brock Bowers? There's not going to be another Brock Bowers at tight end. But Etienne, to me, has the look of another X factor. What did you see from Etienne at Florida, and how do you think Georgia might use him?
The thing that I like about Etienne, going into last season, when you watched the Florida rushing attack, and I knew what Billy's run game was going to be watching it at Louisiana, you thought to yourself, okay, Montrell Johnson, who was with him there, is going to be the hammer, and then Etienne's going to kind of be your outside zone, toss sweep, screen guy, maybe give him a jet every now and then. And as the season goes on, here comes Etienne, inside zone. He'll run a little power here and there. And there was no shying away of utilizing him between the tackles. So the frame, the size, the stature, whatever it is that some people might look at and say, well, he can't be 20-25 a game. He can be. Now, I don't think Georgia's going to have to use him that way. And I actually think we always want to spin a negative into a positive, right? There's no other Brock Bowers. He literally was a unicorn in college football. But I do think that Coach Bobo went out of his way to feature him at times, find ways to get him the football, as he should have. It's crazy, Mike. Like after the Auburn game, I'm seeing people on social media saying, all Carson Beck can do is throw it to Brock Bowers. Like, hey, if it ain't for 19, he ain't got nothing. Well, hell, on 3rd and 8 or 4th and 10, the game on the line, I would hope you would throw it to your best player. Like, you show me a level of intelligence there as a quarterback. I think now Mike Bobo is not going to feel the responsibility of designing a portion of the game plan for a certain guy. And it can be Ra Thomas one week. It could be maybe Etienne another week. It can be Dylan Bell moving him around, backfield, out of the backfield, tossing him a screen, utilizing him downfield. It could be a Dominic Lovett one week. And then you have multiple tight ends that are going to be capable. They're not Bowers, but Lawson Lucky's capable. You can move around. Oscar Delp's capable. You can do different things with those guys from a formation standpoint. I almost think the toolbox is almost more complete this year for Mike Bobo and Carson Beck than it was a year ago, a lot because of the experience. I think the offensive line is going to be pretty good too. But you also are not going to sit back and say, all right, let's find ways to make sure he gets the ball. Now, what's the defense doing? Let's maneuver around that because we have a lot of different players that we trust.
Yeah, no doubt. And Carson Beck, you've got a guy, like we say, he can solve Rubik's Cube in under a minute, and he can read a defense in 5 seconds. So he's going to be able to pinpoint those matchup advantages, and it will change from week to week for the Georgia Bulldogs. Now, flipping it over to the defense, you've seen a lot of Georgia defense all the way back to your playing days as an Auburn lineman. Things have changed since then. What is it about Kirby Smart defenses that makes them so dominant?
The first thing is effort. It's a defense that will attack you, that will come after you, that will hit you, that will attempt to punish you, all within the rules of the game. And let's just be real, Mike. There's not a lot of players individually or teams that operate that way anymore. It's the same thing with finishing as an offensive lineman. It's rare to see guys that want to go the extra mile to try to make you feel them, so to speak. And Georgia does that on a regular basis. The next thing would be, and I really feel like when Schumann came in, this is when it went to the next level, the precision in which they operate. You can watch a lot of teams pressure, and the linebackers going to the backside B gap. Well, with Georgia, it's that defensive tackle usually understands how long that he has to withhold that right guard for the offensive lineman before he comes all the way inside. just so that backer can hug his left hip to just get right inside of that B gap. The precision in which they operate is different than almost any other defense that I see. There's an understanding of how to make things easier, even though it may be harder to accomplish it the way they're asking you to do it. So it's just giving yourself the ability to be more effective, really. And just not a lot of teams operate that way. Right. So they're nasty, they're mean, they come after you, they physically want to punish you, and they do it in a more precise way than almost any defense in college football.
Yeah, going back to Jordan Davis, remember, 2 on me, somebody's free. That no-name defense and the way Georgia played in 2021, I think the best defense of the modern era. Now, we're here in Texas, Dallas. It's finally happened. The Longhorns and the Sooners are coming. This event has been spectacular. How real is the threat with Texas and Oklahoma?
I don't know about threat, Mike, but I look at this as two of the most historical college football programs that we have. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is most people will probably just immediately lean Texas. Right. Well, go look at the national championships. Go look at the Heisman trophies. It's Oklahoma. They are the more historically prominent program in college football. In the lore of college football, they are. Texas is a bigger brand. It means more. It has more attention. It does more when you put those two next to each other. But when you're talking about playing great football, Oklahoma's done it more often than Texas has. The reality is these two belong. They fit. Same way with Texas A&M when they came in.
Sure.
And I think when we're able to go to Norman and see it, and Austin and see it, and you see how those fans react, the traditions that they have, and just plain and simple what it means to them, it's going to be a perfect fit for this league. And it's going to make the schedules more difficult. It's going to make the perception of the league that much stronger. And they are two teams that have the capability to go win the league this year. Texas, a little bit ahead of Oklahoma right now. I think collectively their talent is a little bit ahead of Oklahoma. But here's what Oklahoma has: star power. Oklahoma has Jackson Arnold, who has a chance to be an absolute star in college football. Deion Burks at receiver can be a star in college football. Danny Stutzman at linebacker, Billy Bowman at safety. They have legitimate star power and star capability. I just don't know if they have it all over the place. But if you're talking down the middle of the defense or quarterback-receiver combo, Oklahoma's got that. Now, they got some offensive line issues, some tight end issues, but they have the making of legitimate star power on their roster. And Texas has an offensive coordinator that seemingly can work through anything, a quarterback that knows how to get it there, and one of the best offensive lines in college football.
Now, speaking of star power, Nick Saban now in the broadcast, but still needs a credential to get in, apparently. I like that. I like that Saban got turned away. I did too, by the way. A little difference there. But Kalen DeBoer takes over, and you're obviously you do a lot in Birmingham and Alabama. There's been a lot of talk about Coach DeBoer. Seems like he's kind of realized the waters that he's waded into. I expect a really good presentation. What is your read on this year's Alabama team?
First off, I think Kalen DeBoer is an amazing head coach.
Right.
You go back and look at what he's accomplished in his time and NAIA at Fresno State and then at Washington. I mean, I think he's 10-1 against top 10 teams all time. I mean, you look at Jake Haener at Fresno State, an elite quarterback. Mike Penix wasn't great until he got with Kalen DeBoer and these guys, and all of a sudden he's a great quarterback. Would Bama fans have loved to see Ryan Grubb and Scott Huff come with him? Yeah, probably, but keep in mind, this is Kalen's offense.
Right.
Kalen's just as capable of running it, and it can be his show. I don't think this Alabama team has the overall talent, the overall depth that we have seen in the last, let's just say, 8 to 10 years. But kind of similar to Oklahoma, quarterback, legit star power. I think running back, one of the two, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, will break out and be big time this year. Linebacker, they might have the best linebacker tandem, just the first two in the SEC, but I don't know what they have after that.
Right.
It's not the Alabama D-lines we've been used to. Tackle is a real concern. Middle of the offensive line should be great. So you have some pieces that could make it really good. And if they are coached up maybe a little bit more, a little bit differently, they should be knocking on the door for a playoff berth. They should be in the mix to win this conference. I just think from an overall talent perspective, level of comfort with staff and players returning, have to put Georgia ahead of Alabama so far in the league.
Yeah, September 28th, big date in Tuscaloosa.
Massive.
Georgia goes there. You like Georgia to win that game as of now?
Right now, I'll take Georgia to win that game, yes.
Yeah. Another big game for Georgia this season is going to be in Oxford against the Ole Miss Rebels. Lane Kiffin with his presentation today. Obviously, his father, Monty, passed last Thursday. NFL great, college football defensive guru. Lane paying tribute to his father. And then turned his talk to football as we expected. A lot of transfers at Ole Miss, Cole. And I think coaches now are becoming accustomed to more and more people coming through the door. Is that still a concern, though, when you have 20, 30 guys in your two deep that are transfer students?
I think where you're going is it becomes less of a concern for someone like Lane Kiffin, who is essentially making their bed that way.
Right.
That's how they're going to build their house. So you're not worried about what materials you're using because that's how you've always built houses. So you feel like it's going to work and you're confident with it. This is the most talented Ole Miss roster I've ever seen. I mean, and this is, I think, the highest expectation for an Ole Miss team that I've ever seen. I was trying to think back to some of those Eli teams, and I knew they were going to be pretty good, but this is almost playoff or bust for this team right now. And the expectation probably should be there based on what they have. So if you just went roster, players, position groups, and started picking through it, honestly, Mike, it's hard to find the holes in this football team, not just the offense or the defense. Now, that doesn't mean the defense is going to be top 10, but I think it's got a chance to be better. They have some defensive linemen that are body types that they haven't had in a long time. You know, they have a quarterback that not only knows the system, but is a bit of a gamer, can step outside the system, make plays, do things. Mike, he's got 2 wide receivers that would be number 1 on just about every team in this league. Two guys, if Juice Wells is healthy, and Trey Harris as well. So it's hard to find the holes. So what do we come to next? What's the makeup going to be? What's their DNA going to be? What's their attitude going to be? What's their communication going to be like? They get punched in the face, how are they going to react? That's right. If they're down 10 in the second quarter on the road, how do they react to that? And I do think certain players like Jackson Dart, Caden Priestcorn add a lot of maturity, but that doesn't mean your team is always going to take on that. So I think where Georgia gets Ole Miss is a massive advantage Georgia. Because Georgia's used to getting in a fist fight late in the season. Ole Miss not super comfortable being that football team. So it's one where the athleticism might even overall be advantage Ole Miss, but where that game is on the schedule, I think it's a big advantage for Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia's had no problem on the road as well. It's been a minute since the Dogs have lost on the road. Tennessee, Auburn, Kentucky, it's still the SEC. I mean, we can pinpoint the Alabama game. We can talk about the Texas game. We can talk about Ole Miss. All very obvious. The Clemson opener has everyone's attention. But I'm going to look at Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky. I mean, in this league, anything can happen on a Saturday. Of those teams, which one has the best puncher's chance to beat Georgia this year?
It's Tennessee right now. I think you could have the discussion. I'm not definitively saying this, but if you asked who is in the best shape across their defensive line, Tennessee is in that discussion. Wow. Tennessee has 4 interior defensive linemen that are good players in this league. And just because none of those is Jalen Carter or Nick Fairley or a guy like that can just wreck a game, they're good players. And, Mike, I think we are as light, and I don't mean that from an actual pound standpoint, but we're as light on interior defensive line talent across this league as I can remember. We're used to every team having a dude, a guy, a glass eater, like just somebody, an MFer that you don't mess with.
Byproduct of NIL?
I think so, because it's a lack of development, and if guys are not on that first tier, they're leaving.
Right.
If they're going to get second-tier reps, they're going to go somewhere else. Like we just talked about Ole Miss benefiting from that. But this is not where Mississippi State, has Simmons and Sweat, and Auburn has, Davidson and Brown, and Georgia has 5 guys, and Tennessee has 2 or 3. Like it's not that. Florida might have 1 in Cam Jackson, but he's only taken over 1 game in his career, and that was Tennessee last year. So I think it's going to be advantage teams that have really good offensive lines going into this season. But Tennessee has that. They have 4 interior D linemen that are good players. James Pierce may be the best edge rusher in the league, and the offensive line has a chance to be great. Now, I'll say this. Tennessee is a couple guys away from pure tragedy. Like, they have to have Cooper Mays in the lineup. I think a guy like Keenan Peely, Dylan Sampson at running back. I just think there are more massive drop-offs for Tennessee at certain spots than there are a lot of other teams. Like, we can say that about quarterback or edge rusher for almost any team in a year. Tennessee's got a couple guys that have to stay healthy, and if they do, I think because of the physicality on both sides of the line of scrimmage, they're as close to being capable of just matching up with Georgia a little bit as they have been under this coaching regime. So that with, like, this Chris Brazzell kid they got from Tulane, he can freaking go. He is a big-time wide receiver, and you get a couple back that were already there. You got a quarterback that we don't know. Looks like he might be great. Might not be great. But with Spraggins back at guard, Mays back at center, and you get Zalance Hurden from LSU at the other tackle, that offensive line has a chance to be really, really good. So out of those teams, I would probably say that Tennessee has the best chance right now.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you this. Got to ask you about your alma mater. Hugh Freeze, this coach, I compare him to a knuckleball pitcher because when he's on, he's on. And we saw him almost lose to a really bad team, and then we saw him take Georgia deep into the fourth quarter. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, beaten Alabama. What about the Auburn Tigers? They strike me as a team that could beat anybody in the league and lose to anybody on a Saturday. Am I that far off, and how much progress has been made on the Plains?
A lot of progress has been made, because if you look at traditional high school recruiting, I can't tell you the last time it's been where it is right now.
Right.
Definitely not the last two regimes, maybe early in Gus Malzahn's tenure, but that tapered off the last couple of years. I mean, Hugh Freeze is getting the number of 4- and 5-star recruits he's just getting on campus is ahead of where it's been for at least 10, 15 years. He's having success in the portal. I know people don't like that he didn't go get another quarterback, but I kind of like the collective nature in which he went to try and upgrading his roster. Let's go get 2 more D tackles, a linebacker, an edge rusher, another receiver to try to help our team instead of just get another quarterback.
Right.
I think he understands that wasn't his only problem last year, and a lot of people are going to view it that way. What's a quarterback's best friend? Receiver. Well, Auburn might have 4 or 5, possibly 6 receivers coming in that are better than anybody they had last year.
Wow.
I mean, they get a slot receiver from Georgia State that is a legitimate catch-and-run guy that's better than what they had in the slot last year. Cam Coleman will be better than anybody they had last year. Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State is better than anybody they had last year. And you got another freshman or 2 that are making noise that may work their way into the lineup. I think the middle of the offensive line is going to be really good. Connor Lew is going to be a star in this league at center. You're finally getting Jeremiah Wright going at right guard. Dylan Wade bumps down. That solidifies the middle. Who here is talking about Jarquez Hunter? Nobody's mentioned his name to me today so far, and he's the most proven running back in the SEC. Give me another guy that has proven more than Jarquez Hunter has. There are none. So if you're able to run the football, and Peyton Thorne showed you last year he can do a little bit with his legs, and all of a sudden that receiver room is really different, he doesn't have to be Joe Burrow. He doesn't have to be Carson Beck to go out and win football games. He just needs to be a guy that can distribute the football, play within the system, and that's there. I saw it at Michigan State. He's got it in him. So the comfort level, the confidence has to come with that, and that's what we don't know yet. But I'm with you. I think Auburn can get a team or 2. I think they have a chance to exceed some of the expectations, which most people have them at 5, 6 wins. So if you get to 7, 8, yeah, it's a little ahead of what some people think. I don't know if Auburn fans are truly satisfied with that. If you get a Georgia or an Alabama, they probably will be, but we'll see.
Yep. Georgia catching Auburn at home. That's a break last year in Jordan-Hare Stadium. That one went down to the wire. Cole, can't thank you enough. Love your work on the SEC Network and with ESPN, WJX Radio as well, and then, of course, the Cube podcast.
Maybe appearing those places.
I'll look forward to it. When we come back, the hot and cold segment brought to you by Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing.
Want to make sure your family stays comfortable all year long? Our family of trained comfort specialists are available anytime to service or repair your system. Or it may be time to replace your old units with a new Trane HVAC system.
We are a locally owned family business, and we carefully select the technicians who we send into your home.
At Anytime Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, we are large enough to handle all of your HVAC and plumbing needs,
but small enough to care.
Call today to take advantage of our 3-visit annual maintenance plan.
Well, welcome back to the program. Now time for the hot and cold segment. It seems like everything's hot right now. Georgia's hot, Texas hot. It's the weather, right? Nick Saban has been hot. Listen, you don't have to like Nick Saban as a football coach to enjoy him as an analyst. I mean, the guy has pretty good game. His philosophical, motivational sayings have been going, self-standard of excellence. You hear a little bit of that in Kirby. Some of the things he probably picked up from Saban, but I think Kirby kind of comes up with his own Kirbyisms tomorrow. Georgia will be appearing here in Dallas. We'll be able to talk a lot more about Georgia's slogans. But today, Monday, opening day of SEC Media Days, Nick Saban has been red hot. Hottest pick of all. He takes Georgia to beat Texas, not Alabama. And we wondered, would he favor Alabama? Being the former Alabama coach, would there be a little homerism, a little push? You see that from Desmond Howard all the time on game day. But no, not Nick Saban. Nick's going to call it like it is. He wants to be right. And he's calling Georgia to beat Texas in the SEC championship game. Now remember, this is the first year since 1991 that there's not divisional play. And there might even have been divisional play then. I'm trying to think. 93 was when we started the SEC championship game format, right? No, 92 was the first year of the SEC championship game format. Now it's not East versus West. It's just top 2. Top 2 out of 16. So Saban's pick, Georgia to beat Texas in the SEC title game, to me, a hot take. Here's another hot take. Here's another Nick Saban not apologizing to anybody. He's sitting on a set here in Dallas, Texas. Everybody's throwing a parade for the Texas Longhorns, including Texas, who's telling everybody they're the team to beat. But Nick Saban says, hey, Texas ain't going to run this league. And what he's talking about is politics. Texas, for years and years and years, carried a bigger club than anyone in the Big 12. In fact, even in the revenue sharing, it's hard to believe there was one school that would get a bigger share than everyone else, but that's the power that Texas had. Then they had their own network. They were one of the first to do that. Obviously, the Notre Dame broadcasting channel, NBC's had Notre Dame, but Texas goes out, gets their own. Will it happen in the SEC? Will Texas throw their weight around? Saban says no. They're not going to run this league. Warm, right? Warm moment, Lane Kiffin. We knew that his father, Monte, passed last Thursday. Monte, of course, the architect of the Tampa 2 defense that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won a Super Bowl with. Later coached with Lane at Tennessee. And I have inside into that. When they hired Lane Kiffin, a big part of the reason why Tennessee hired Lane Kiffin as a head coach was because of Monte Kiffin. That was a huge part of Lane Kiffin getting that job at Tennessee back in the day. That's how well-respected Monte Kiffin was, and certainly Lane, with a very warm and heartfelt gesture toward his father today, didn't want to elaborate too much. He understood here to talk football, but at the same time honored his dad, said hero is not the right term for him. He's a superhero. That was a very warm moment. Cold takes. Can't get away from Nick Saban. Can't get away from. Mentioned it a little bit in segment 2. Nick Saban turned away without a credential. Are you kidding me? Like, I want to know who the person was that told Nick Saban that he had to go back to his room and get a credential. I can't imagine anybody standing in front of Nick and saying no, but somebody did. At least that's the story that he told. Nick Saban, now I got turned away without a credential. I left mine in the room. I just had to make me another credential real fast. I didn't go back to the room. So Coach Saban needs to get a little bit more savvy, know who Craig Pinkerton is, and know these SEC officials that will work with you a little bit. So I was fortunate to pivot and make it in time for the start of the show. Nick Saban, not so fortunate, turned away without his credential. There's a story on that on DawgNation.com. You can hear everything that Nick had to say about that. Finally, cold. It's Vanderbilt. It's Vanderbilt. They're the last team to go on day one. Nobody's in there. Nobody's listening. I don't forget that Vanderbilt did not show up at Georgia in 2020. Not once, but twice, Vanderbilt failed to show up. Now, I'll say this for Clark Lee. They showed up. Vanderbilt is here. But that room is ice cold. I can't imagine anything coming out of that room of significance or substance. So that is my daily shot, or my weekly shot at Vanderbilt. They're the last team on the schedule today for interviews, and they're the last team that anybody wants to hear about in the SEC. Even though Nashville, a red-hot town, and Vanderbilt, one of the best academic institutions on the planet. So that'll wrap it up from SEC Media Days here in Dallas. I'm Mike Griffith. Really appreciate you joining me. Don't forget, each day this week, we've got a broadcast from here. You're going to see Kaylee Manziel and Cody Chaffins. We're going to have shows at night. Jeff Sentel Wednesday nights. Connor and Kaylee go Thursday nights. And Brandon Adams will be back very soon with DawgNation Daily. I know everybody's waiting to hear what BA's got to say about this. You can bet he is soaking this in somewhere. You will get Brandon Adams' takes on all these things. But this week, check it out live here in Dallas. Really enjoyed the show. If you got any comments, please throw them down. You can email me at MikeGriffith32 at Gmail, Mike Griffith032 at gmail.com. Have a great week, everybody.